Thank you. And good afternoon from my side. First of all, I'm really sorry that I'm not able to speak to you in your mother tongue, in Czech. I was screwing up 10 minutes.
Stand over there?
No, I have to stand here.
Oh, you have to, okay.
Sorry. Yeah, as I was just saying, I grew up 10 minutes away from the Czech border in Austria, but unfortunately I never learned how to speak it, so sorry I have to use English in order to make myself understood. I hope I'm able to do so. I'm LUDWIG RUMETSHOFER. As it was just said, I'm a farmer in Austria, an organic farmer. We do vegetables, cows, cereals, we bake bread, we do all this in on-farm sailing. And besides working the field, I'm also employed at the Austrian Mountain and Small-Scale Farmers Organization, which is part of La Via Campesina. And because of that, I was invited today to bring you the idea of this organization. Why was it founded? What is the reason why we farmers and peasants think of we need an organization like this, and also about the issues we work on. And then my colleague Lina, we do quite a lot of activism over the past, I would say, almost a decade together. And also one of the main things we work on is the concept and the movement for food sovereignty. So I will first explain La Via Campesina, and then Lena will take over and bring to you the concept and also the movement of food sovereignty. We try to be quite quick in order to have enough room and time and space for your questions. We are much more into discussing with people instead of telling them how the world is and how it looks like. This is also one of the main things we in the movement, in the farmers and in the food sovereignty movement, think of how we also should work towards another world. And this already brings me to what is La Via Campesina. We basically are an international movement, and international really means global movement, of farmers, small and medium-sized ones, rural women, indigenous people, landless people, rural youth, and farm workers. So basically everybody who feels themselves connected to working the land, and also the issues we work with. A very, very important thing is that we are a movement. We don't see ourselves as an institution or something like that. We are a movement, and as a movement we are autonomous, we are diverse in the way how we act, we think. We are multicultural, we are independent, and we are definitely free of political, economic and other affiliations. And what we do is basically presenting and standing in for our needs. So basically we discuss together on a very participatory approach and method what we want, what are the problems we are facing, and then how to overcome the problems and reach what we want. That's basically what we do. On this slide you can see, it's unfortunately quite an old one, but you can see where our members are all over the world. So as you can see, America, North and South America is quite strong. Europe is okay. Africa, that's why it's old. Now most of Africa is green, especially South Africa, but Southern Africa. And in Asia we have a few new members as well, but yeah, just to give you an impression where we are. And I don't know if there is the note, it's not. There are around 250 million peasant and farmers organized within the movement of La Via Campesina. It's in almost 80 countries, I think it's 79, and 170 organizations. just to give you a kind of feeling how big we are. And what was the need to create La Via Campesina? Basically, we struggle a lot with the way how agriculture is forced into an economic system that's basically there to generate profits, to generate rendits. And also agriculture is forced into this. And we as farmers, who not want to make profits, I mean, yes, for sure, we want to have, or we want to earn a wage to make our living, but we don't want to have as much profit as possible. But in the mainstream global agricultural system, this is exactly what's happening. And because of this, and this is called neoliberalism, capitalist system, because of this, a lot of farmers, peasants, fisher folks and so on, are driven out of production and are taken over by a very destructive, nature destructive, socially destructive system that uses a lot of input from the outside to produce as much as possible. And we say we don't want to produce like this. We want to have another way to produce food. And here this is a kind of drawing that symbol as a symbol shows how we see ourselves. So basically there is neoliberalism, and we want to basically fight and struggle against it. Because through, as I already said, the liberalization of agricultural markets, or the liberalization of agricultural markets was globalized, especially through the creation of the WTO and all the policies that came through the WTO and organizations like the World Bank and the IMF. And this is basically our analysis, and we have to basically think of other ways how to go there. In this context, in 1993, La Via Campesina emerged. So it was founded in Mons. Mons is in Belgium, and there are a few locally, regionally operating organizations created the global movement La Via Campesina. And we have the goal to respond to the economic, political and social context that's undermining the right of family farmers, but not just family farmers, because family farmers is a dangerous term, from my point of view, on their land and their seeds. And this basically threatens local knowledge, the way how to produce fruit, not just fruits, but also food, and the rural culture. By, as I already said, this globalization of the industrial model of food production. And therefore, La Via Campesina searches for another way how to produce food, or another path, as it is written on this slide. So basically, to strengthen solidarity and unite small farmer organizations is one of the key quests we do, and we want to promote this also very, very strong pillar within La Via Campesina, gender parity, the right of women in the food system, but not only in the food system, but also in society in general. And this we do to protect our land, water, seeds and other natural resources. And how do we do this? We promote food sovereignty, we promote sustainable agriculture that's based on small and middle-sized or medium-sized producers. What do we defend? So basically, what are our main ways how we think agriculture should look like? It's about the peasant model of production, also of healthy food. This peasant model must be based on agroecology. Agroecology is not the same as ecological. Agroecology is much more. Agroecology also means the connection between a farmer and the earth. It also means the right of women. It also means the right of youth has to be in the center of a production model. So it's not just not using pesticides and herbicides, it's also about feelings to the land, to the animals you work with. And this gives a completely different approach to the way how to produce food instead of, or compared to the industrial model. What do we defend? Food sovereignty. Food sovereignty, Lena will talk about, so I will be very, very quick about it, but basically it does mean putting the needs of the people who work in the food system and who benefit from a food system, so basically everybody, in the center of this food producing system. And not the interests and needs of capital, TNCs, and so on. Right now, it's the complete opposite. I mean, for sure, you can't generalize, but the mainstream and the trend is going there. So, food sovereignty has to be defended, and we as La Via Campesina, as we will hear later from Lena, are quite involved in this. Another thing that's very important for us is the decentralization of food production, also about the distribution systems. We have already heard today about community-supported agriculture models and so on. We think that the value chains, not just the value chains, but also short distribution cycles basically have to be established instead of having established global cycles where you produce the feed for livestock, for example, in Argentina, ship it to Europe through Rotterdam, through the haven Rotterdam, then bring it to the cows all over Europe and produce milk, which you then export again to Africa. We think food production has to be decentralized in order to have an ecological and social fair production system. Only if you have direct relations, or at least closed circles or cycles, it's possible to do so. As I already mentioned before, La Via Campesina was created or founded in 1993. We basically work, as I also already said, on a very participatory level. So in order to come to our common positions, we have to come together and discuss them. And how do we do this? Every 4 to 5 years, we have an international conference, and it's supposed to happen always on a different continent, where we, in big groups with a very sophisticated methodology, try to come up with a common position. And therefore, the member organization sends their delegates there, and it's quite a big thing. And there were the second international conference in Mexico in 1996. There was the third one in India in 2000. The fourth one in Brazil. The fifth one in Maputo, Mozambique. And as you can see on the number of representatives and delegates, it's growing and growing. And then there was 2013, the sixth one in Jakarta, and this was the biggest one so far with around 600 to 700 people. And here you can see some actions we do. Cancun 2003, there was a meeting of the WTO going on, I think, and this was blocked by civil society, and also La Via Campesina was a big part of it. And well, basically the main goal there was to bring in our demand of taking agriculture out of free trade agreements, because especially through this free trade regime, food sovereignty never can be realized. So basically, the democratization of a food system, in order to, as I said before, fitting the needs of the people who produce and eat food, we can't do this democratization with international trade, like free trade agreements like the TTIP, or in former times it was discussed in the WTO. Another action was going on, or a very important one, milestone you could say, was in Hong Kong 2005. There was the Doha round of the WTO. And yeah, it was a big success, because there the Doha round was stopped after this, and since then it didn't proceed very much again. In Brazil 2006 was another one, but I'll skip this one. And this is a very important one, because this was in Mali 2007. And it was about food sovereignty again, and defining it, and Lena will talk about it a little bit more in detail. And this I put in because I also wanted to bring the connection to the FAO, which is the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. And just illustrate that we also not only work by demanding something when we go demonstrating on the streets, but we also try to influence political institutions, or political leaders, institutions, and so on. And we also go to meetings like the FAO and try to kind of shift the narrative that is responsible for the discourse that is going on in such institutions. So, and now to come, or to regionalize the context I'm talking about, I now want to speak a little bit about the La Via Campesina in Europe, because that's where we are, that's where we act mainly. And there was, in 2011 in Krems, a very, very important meeting, not just of farmers, but of the whole civil society as a whole. And it was the European Forum for Food Sovereignty, where we as farmers tried to connect and get together with people from the whole society in order to really, really change this food system. Because, you know, farmers right now are within the European Union, I think 5% or so. And with 5% you don't change a society. So the only way for us to actually change, shift, and build up a new way of farming, distributing food, of eating, of basically the way how we live together, we have to connect with as many people as possible. And the Lena Europe Forum, again it was about food sovereignty, about what Lena is going to talk later on, was the main topic of this meeting. And in Europe, La Via Campesina is called the European Coordination Via Campesina, short it's ECVC. And right now we have around 29 members, or member organizations, and we basically we do all the work we do in our own organizations in our country or region. And how do we organize to work together? There are different working groups, as quite often in movements like this, and we have working groups on food sovereignty, on seeds, on international trade, on the CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy of the European Union, a working group on youth, on women, on milk, on migration, etc., etc. And our priorities within ECVC are mainly, as I mentioned before, the food sovereignty movement. So to try to bring together the issues we are working on with people from civil society, with people from all different spheres, I would say, of the society, in order to really make a change. Another main priority is the food and agricultural policies. There we work on the CAP, but we also work on global policies like the UN policies, on the FAO policies. Then trade policies and production and food chains are quite a big issue as well. Right now we are very strongly involved in the resistance of the TTIP. There is now a big movement going on all over Europe, and we as farmers also think that in order to keep our way of, or our agroecological way of farming existing, we have to really try to get rid of this model of international trade. We really fear about our own existence, basically. And we also, as I already mentioned before, think quite a lot about the modes of production and how to deal with our natural resources. Is it about seeds? Is it about water? But also about land and access to land, especially for young farmers, is a very big issue. How to get into farming if you don't inherit that land? It's really drastic. And on the other hand, land is being bought by big investors, as we also heard before, and then called land grabbing. So there is a really big fight and struggle for land going on. For sure, GMOs, climate change, and agrofuels are also quite important for us. And another thing are peasant rights, women rights, the right of youth, migrant workers, and, as I mentioned, access to land. One could say, okay, you do work on so many different topics. You can never reach your goals. It's very difficult if you are not focused onto one specific thing and try to break this through more or less. Yeah? But I say no, especially this diverse, multicultural style of working together, of bringing farmers together, of trying to ask for our needs and then bring this into a political agenda is what's really encouraging us. And it has been inspiring. It's enabled us to really build strong relationships with other social movements. and it was we also played a very big role in the resistance against this destructive neoliberal system, not just in agriculture, but in the whole society. And I think if we as Europeans want to overcome the way how we right now destroy our soil, destroy water, treat animals like shit, and want to have healthy food that's also bringing up chances for our next generations, we not only have to talk about food, we have to talk about how to fight capitalism. And I think this is basically the main thing, or my main argument I wanted to make. Thank you.
Okay, so Lutz has said that the food sovereignty movement is not only about La Via Campesina and farmers and peasants, but it's about connecting to all different parts of society. So I would just like to know, because I'm interested, I mean, this is now the first forum for food sovereignty here in the Czech Republic, and I'm really glad we are invited. I would like to know who's here, like who feels him or herself as a peasant or farmer. Could you maybe stand up quickly? Who is peasant or farmer? Okay. And who feels like a more or less bigger farmer? And who is like small scale farming? Who does a little bit of producing, maybe for him or herself also? Just stand up. Come on, don't feel shy. Okay, okay. And who's part of an NGO, of an organization, of a civil society organization? Just stand up. It makes them get some movement into the movement for food sovereignty. That's also something new about the food sovereignty forums, which have already existed. We usually move around a lot. We have new methodologies, and we try to be creative. Okay, and who sees him or herself as an activist, maybe urban activist? Okay. And as a worker, maybe. Yeah, working and that doesn't have to do with the food system. Just as a worker, maybe part of a trade union. No, that's usually a problem at the food sovereignty forums. There's not enough people from that part of society. Okay, well, good. I have a picture now, and you maybe too. Yeah, I just wanted to ask what is food sovereignty? I mean, we have heard a lot of problems now, like things that are not food sovereignty, the opposite of food sovereignty. We have heard a small definition from Lutz. Maybe you can just take yourself half a minute and think about 3 things which you think food sovereignty is. Just in your head. You don't have to tell me. 3 things. Somebody want to say it?
Yeah, I think 3 things. Policy, agriculture policy, agriculture policy, land, area of the land, and cooperation, local cooperation.
Okay. Somebody else maybe? Or you just keep it to yourself, it's fine too. Sorry.
The right to decide and to control our own, the right to decide and to control our own resources. That's two.
Okay, perfect. Good. And what do you think is food security? Do you have two different words in Czech? Yeah, I'm sure you do. Because there is a big difference, actually. I think that's important to show. So I just give a definition from food security from the UN Organization of Food and Agriculture. Food security exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. So, food security means there is food for everybody. Nobody is hungry. Yeah? It doesn't really mean that you have a right to food and to the means of producing food. And it doesn't really mean that you are actually part of decision making of what kind of food, how is it produced, who produces it, how is it distributed, how is it consumed, who consumes it. And it also doesn't say anything about how to reach food security. Yeah? So the methods can be, or the methods are, the dominant methods to reach food security are growth and productivity. Yeah? The message is, in order to feed the whole world, we need to produce more. While food sovereignty says, we actually already produce enough food, but the distribution is bad. It's a problem of distribution. We produce food for animal feed, we produce food for fuels, for agrofuels, for example. We produce food which is mostly consumed in the countries of the global north, and in the global south there is not enough food. It has to do with economy. So and this productivity, how is it achieved? By high inputs, by fossil fuels, by pesticides, herbicides, etc. By genetical engineering. There's actually right now a really new drive to promote genetical engineering in the global south and in the whole world. Right now also with the legitimization of climate change. So we need to intensify our food production, and they promote new genetically engineered food, seeds which are climate resistant or which have better productivity. So and also all the problems which are already mentioned are part of this strategy to achieve food security, like the monopolies on seeds, the export-oriented agriculture, the free trade, also this thing of, okay, everybody needs food, but it can also be achieved by food aid. We always give food aid, but we don't help the people to themselves produce their food. Actually, we hinder them to produce their own food. There's this problem of depeasantization. We see it as a problem, but a lot of organizations and also part of the UN organizations which treat this topic, they think that depeasantization, that having less small-scale farms, is the solution. Yeah? To have big farms, that's the solution. So and also this leads to the denial of access to land and other resources, leads to land grabbing. And actually we see that it doesn't solve the problem. There is a lot of hunger, there is a lot of bad nutrition, and their strategy is not working. Apart from hunger, we also see the ecology crisis, we see the climate crisis. We see the injustice which is connected to this food system. So, food sovereignty, there's a definition from 2002, means the right of peoples, communities and countries to define their own agricultural, labor, fishing, food and land policies, which are ecologically, socially, economically and culturally appropriate to their unique circumstances. It includes the true right to food and to produce food, which means that all people have the right to safe, nutritious and culturally appropriate food and to food-producing resources and the ability to sustain themselves and their societies. So it's something really different to food security. And you can also see that it's the right of peoples, communities and countries. It's not only the right of countries. Sometimes food sovereignty, people think, oh, it's about one nation is sovereign, but it's not only about a national concept. It's also inside inside a state. And there has to be a democratic decision-making of how to get to the food policies. That's a really long definition. I don't read it out now, but you can find it at the declaration of the first Millennium Forum in 2007, and it's the definition which is mostly used when talking about food sovereignty. I think it's really, really good, because it says it's the right of peoples, and it puts those who produce, distribute and consume food at the heart of the food system, which is what Lutz already said. It's a strategy to resist and dismantle the current corporate trade in food regime. It's a strategy of resistance also. It's not, yeah, so it's also saying no to some things. Yeah, it prioritizes local and national economies and empowers peasants. It guarantees a just income, and down there it also says food sovereignty implies new social relations, free of oppression and inequality between men and women, peoples, racial groups, social classes and generations, which is really important too, that this is part of food sovereignty, and that food sovereignty can't be taken by right-wing groups and which say, okay, our nation needs to be sovereign, and we want our people, we want to feed our people, and who don't include migrants, who don't include workers from the lower class, who don't include women. Okay, so food sovereignty is a counter-concept to food security, or actually food sovereignty is like our real way to reach real food security, maybe. It puts the democratization of the food system in the center. And it's a concept in movement and a concept coming out from social movements. Yeah? So La Via Campesina brought forward this concept of food sovereignty, but it's not the same as it was in 1996 when the term was first phrased, but it is evolving, it's in movement. And at every forum, at every meeting, every declaration that is written, it always evolves. There are declarations which fit to some special contexts. Maybe you think that for Czech Republic, food sovereignty is something different than in Austria, because the circumstances are different, your history is different, and it's fine. It's just about discussing it and about creating a common understanding. That's what the point of such meetings is too. So just really shortly, because Lutz already talked about it a little bit, the first Global Forum for Food Sovereignty, which was called Millennium, took place in 2007. There were food sovereignty forums before that, but in 2007 they started with the term Millennium, and the important thing about it was that it included not only farmers but also people from different parts of society. And Nyelini is the name of a legendary farming woman in Mali. So it's also important, I think, to have a name from a country from the global south and from a woman, which is the name of this movement. And there was the declaration drawn, and then in 2011, there was the European Nyelini Forum. And I just want to show a couple of pictures. It took place in Austria, and we were part of organizing it. It was a really nice, really great event, 5 days of discussions and great food. The people had already, like the farmers had produced actually the food for the forum. Like they knew in advance how many people there would be probably, and they produced the food for us regionally. Yeah, and the idea was to discuss 3 things. The obstacles to food sovereignty in Europe and worldwide, like what you talked about now in the first discussion round. Second, the goals, what do we want to achieve? And third, how do we get there, the strategies, make an action plan. And the method at those forums was usually similar. There were 5 axes. The first one, and this means that there were 5 working groups, big working groups, which worked a couple days. And in those working groups, they discussed obstacles, goals, and strategies. And the working groups were how is production, distribution, social relations, and work and gender, our commons, how to reclaim our commons, also how to reclaim our land, and the 5th, changing policies. At the Nyelini Europe Forum, in the declaration it says, we call upon the people and social movements in Europe to engage together with us in all our struggles to take control of our food systems and build the movement for food sovereignty in Europe now. So it was a call upon all the people from all different countries, because there were people from 34 different countries in Europe, to go back to their countries and to spread food sovereignty there, to make local forums, meetings, tell the people. And it actually was very successful. There have been a lot of results after this forum, a lot of local forums which didn't have all the same format and method, but they were just, depending on the context, different. And last year we had an Austrian Nyelini Forum too. There's some pictures, there's a nice movie about it too, also about the Nyelini Europe Forum, there's a nice movie. And it was organized mostly by Via Campesina Austria, by ATTAC Austria, and by FIAM, which is a human rights organization for the right of food. And just shortly, I want to explain the 3 goals of those Nyelini meetings. The first one would be to build up or to broaden a grassroots movement for food sovereignty, to bring together existing initiatives and individuals, farmers, NGOs, science movements, workers, trade unions, and to maybe create a network. Or in Austria, we try to create regional groups also who are active, who work. And the second would be to create a common understanding of food sovereignty. Can be a declaration, doesn't have to be. In Austria, we didn't make a declaration. We concentrated on the last point, which was an action plan. Because the 3rd goal would be to explore together what are obstacles for food sovereignty in our region and with which strategies we can achieve food sovereignty. Okay. So, just to mention, there will be a next Millennium Europe Forum next year, or maybe 2017. It's still under debate, but most probably next autumn in Romania. And of course, it would be great to have a delegation from Czech Republic there too, to hear your experiences. Yep. I think that's all from my part, and now you can ask questions and yeah. Or you want to?
Yeah, no, I just want to say we, as I said in the beginning, we want to have time now and room for you to discuss with us together and together in the group and to raise questions on both of our interventions, but also if you have anything to add or have a different view of something, basically. So the floor is yours.
Thanks. You mentioned fight for land. What do you mean by it?
Okay. There are different meanings, and as I also mentioned, within La Via Campesina and also within the food sovereignty movement, we have a very diversified approach how to deal with things. And fight and struggle for land can mean, like in Brazil, our member organization is MST. It's a movement of landless and rural workers. They fight for an agrarian reform, so they basically fight for a redistribution of land in Brazil. In a European context, this maybe is not the right thing to do because we live in a different culture. I mean, some say we should do it as well, but I would say we have other approaches how to get to land. For example, one would be to create systems how young people can go into agriculture if they want to farm, if they actually want to work the land, but don't have the capital to do so. We have to think about different ways how to give them land to work on. And there are farm collectives, for example, and there are also ways of, like in France, there is Théâtre de Lieu, which is a big organization. Yeah, I don't know the word in English. It's a foundation, yeah, basically a foundation. They collect money, and then if there are people who want to farm and don't have the money, they can go there, apply for the money, and then they buy the farm for them. But the property stays within the foundation, and so on. And so they can hand it on later on to other people who want to farm. If those people decide in 20 years they don't want to farm anymore, or their children say, no, we don't want to farm, we want to work as a fishist, as a musician or whatever. And there are ways how to do this, but what from my point of view, is the most important thing. We have to create the political will to change something. The exact instrument, how we then do it, is secondary. The first we have to do is to create the political will to actually make a difference. To not say the most important thing is for me to collect as much land as possible in order to make as much profit. No, we have to develop society consensus, basically, that the most important thing is to produce healthy, good, in a social and ecological fair way produced food in order to feed our population, in order to feed our peoples. And then, from this starting point, we think about the measures and about the instruments. And I guarantee you it will be a completely different world, a completely different way how to do things. Yeah, and also the problem of land grabbing, but that would go too far.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. You mentioned there was a slide in your presentation that said that Via Campesina has inspired specific action, that you have inspired governments to change their policies or resisted specific neoliberal policies, and I wonder if you could give me some of the concrete examples.
There are many.
Great.
Europe, Latin America, Asia. No, where? Let's stay in Europe. Okay. In Europe, it also depends if we speak of national or European level. But let's stay on the European level. You maybe are aware that there was, and it was not just La Via Campesina, but it was together with our allies. There was this seed treaty you were talking about, or was it you? Yeah, I think so. Who was talking about the seeds before? Yeah, it was you. Yeah. They wanted to establish a new seed treaty, a European-wide seed legislative treaty, something like that. I don't know how to say it in English. And basically, through the resistance and the process that was going on with La Via Campesina, together with NGOs from the environmental sector, but also with activists from the civil society, there was a big movement created throughout Europe, and this treaty that would have really threatened, family farms, peasant farming, small and middle-scale farming, was cancelled basically. So this was a very, very big success. Another one would be that the use of, what is it in English? Glyphosate? No. Yeah, okay. Is it?
Glyphosate.
Yeah, it's okay. Roundup, it's when Monsanto sells it, but the stuff that's inside the herbicide, it's a pesticide, whatever. It's a pesticide, I think. In Austria, for example, it's now prohibited because of different players who try to get rid of it. And I think there are many more examples, or there would be a lot of examples all over the globe where we could make a difference. But we haven't succeeded yet. We haven't succeeded in actually really change the narrative, change the paradigm thing, whatever. To really change the mind of society in general. And there is a lot of work still to do. But there are small successes that already make a difference now. Questions?
How are you talking to the politics and governments, and how you are talking with them on the same level, like they hear what you are saying? Do you activize many people, or you have some people which can lobby?
Basically, all of what you just said. We always say, if we want to bring our visions, our aim, our goal, our concept of food sovereignty into reality, if we want to really achieve this goal, we have to use all the possibilities we have. So basically, we lobby on a regional, a national, local, and also on a European-wide level. And we do lobbying by creating petitions, resolutions, and email campaigns, and whatever is necessary. But we also go directly to MEPs, members of the European Parliament, but also to members of the Parliament in the nations, in the countries. And also on a very local basis, we talk to our mayors and tell them to try to get the kitchen of the school in this town only equipped with food from farmers who produce ecologic. So what I want to say is there is not one way. There are many ways. And we think we have to use all of them. But the difficult thing is we are still not so, I mean we are many, but we still need more people, so we need you to help us to do this. So yeah, but yeah, basically we also talk with governments directly, and in some states there are established much stronger connections to states and to the state officials and to governments than in others. As I said, it's quite diverse, but we yeah, basically try all the possibilities there are. Yeah, and there was a big change in the last, I would say, 5 years. In former times, La Via Campesina was always seen as those critical farmers, not critical, those skeptical farmers, and always screaming and shouting and only being on the street and demonstrating. Nowadays, it has changed. It has changed quite a bit. Nowadays, on a global level, we are seen as the voice of small-scaled and middle-scaled food producers within the global institutions of the United Nations. And this is a really, really big change in the way we have to set up our strategies, and also in the way we work, but never give up our intentions and goals and objectives.
Sorry, I have another question. How can a country become part of La Via Campesina, or not a country, an organization? Or does it? What's the difference? Because I heard it's a very complicated process.
No, it's not. Basically, I did mention this in my presentation, and I was hoping that it would come up as a question so that I can explain it. We are organized in a very, the system how we organize is very bottom up. And so we don't go into a country and say, oh, you have to establish a Via Campesina member organization because we want to have one, and here is the money, here is the office, do it. No, we don't have the money to do so, so anyway, it's not possible. But it's not only about the resources, it's also about the feeling and the connection to the organization. It's something different if you come and say, I want to have a member organization in the Czech Republic because I think your values are my values and I want to fight together this bloody bullshit system. Yeah, okay. And it does make something different, and your connection to the work you do is completely different, and the energy and the emphasis you put inside. So basically what we are waiting for, sometimes we go to the Czech Republic and talk a little bit and then hope something will happen, okay? But basically we wait for people to say, here we are, we want to do something, help us. And then it needs basically a legal body, a legal entity, and it must be a farmers organization, or at least an organization that's very, very strongly connected to farmers, and where farmers are in the role of the decision making. And then they basically apply to the European Via Campesina for membership. Then there is once a year the General Assembly of La Via Campesina Europe, and there somebody, let's stay with the Czech example, is going there representing this organization and saying we want to apply and presenting, and then it will be voted on it, and usually then you're a member of La Via Campesina. So that's basically the deal. No, it's not that complicated at all. Yeah.
Hi. You mentioned that you're also working on TTIP, and I wonder what the most important points for you are as a movement to change, and if you feel that you are able to succeed.
You mean to change TTIP? I don't want to change it at all, I want to stop it. There is no point in changing it. It's still a free trade agreement, and I don't care if there is, I mean, I do care a lot if there is ISDS, are those Schiedsgerichte in English? those courts who operate outside of the legal system of the country. ISDS, you know? Thank you. Arbitrage. I don't really care if they're in there or not, because I don't want this whole thing. Because if we think of prosperity of people and wealth of people and happiness of people can only be reached by trying to produce for a world market, trying to make as much profit as possible, because then wealth will trickle down from up to the bottom. I don't think so. I think the narrative and the idea behind free trade is just wrong. And therefore, TTIP stands for this ideology. It stands for this way of thinking. And I said, no, I don't want this. Me as a farmer, my existence is in danger if TTIP is coming. Because as we see, for example, I don't know how much you're into milk, maybe in coffee, but I don't know how much you're into producing milk. But right now we have a big milk crisis going on in Europe. In April, the quota for milk, back then it was every farm, every milk producer could only produce a certain amount of milk. It was more or less removed because it was said, then we can produce as much as possible, competition will do the rest, and we have good prices, and most milk we can produce, whatever, yeah? And we said, no, the prices will decrease, and a lot of farmers will be thrown out of production. And if a farm once closes their doors, it will stay closed. And the situation right now is exactly like that. Farms, milk, dairy farms are closing down. And what does this mean? This means that we get less farmers and less farmers. And if we have less farmers and less farmers, the remaining farmers have to produce in much more efficient and bigger sized way. And this means in an industrial way of farming. And this, the next step, means unhealthy food. This means food that is produced in an unsocial way, in a non-ecological way. I mean, a farmer who is having, let's say, 500 milk cows doesn't know the name of every cow. How does he care about the feelings of the cow? He doesn't. And he doesn't even have the time to do so, because he has to run from the tractor to the stable, to feed them, to milk them, to drive the milk with the big lorry to the factory where the milk is processed and burning out completely. And I don't want to produce in such a milk, in such a farm system. I want to produce where I'm able to make a living out of it, for sure, but also where I know the land, where I know the people I'm selling to, in the best case, and in a completely different way. And TTIP is kind of the symbol that's going into the absolute opposite direction. Sorry for being so long.
I just want to say, you said you are a farmer, so how can you manage to be a farmer and at the same time to do all the job around, I mean, activism and movements and so on? Is it possible? And it is, but it's just a question.
Yeah, good question. I'm working on the farm with 5 other people. We are 6 people. And I work on the farm part-time, basically. So half of my time I work on the farm, and half of the time I do things like this. And so I have to organize when I'm there. And yeah, basically during summer I'm mainly on the farm, and during winter time I mainly in front of people like right now. and in autumn and spring it's difficult. And right now is a difficult situation. But yeah, Jan was persuasive.
Musím přiznat, že jsme ho museli trošku přemlouvat.
Okay, any other question? Maybe one to Lina?
Tak pokud už nejsou otázky, tak moc poděkuju našim mluvčím, děkuju vám i za dotazy. A ještě bude určitě čas teďko na stálé přestávce, která ještě, možná drobně vás ještě držím, která má trvat zhruba od 3/4 do 5 hodin a kde bude, doufejme, za chviličku připraveno nějaké občerstvení. Já vám jenom povím o jeho původu. Bude to zeleninovo vaječné občerstvení ze zeleniny od Svobodného statku na Soutoku, což je hospodářství